Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a Q&A episode, and I have 3 questions I want to dive into. So let's go into them. Is it better to go to maintenance cals or slowly work your way up? Again, I'm assuming this is somebody asking this coming back from a fat loss phase, right? Again, you're going to, in a perfect world, this is what would happen. We would figure out what your maintenance calories are so you would have an idea where that's at. Again, you can use a calculator to get you in the ballpark, then you track for a little bit and see what happens. Again, a lot of people hear that and they're like, I want to drop body fat. And again, a lot of good things can happen at your maintenance calories, and finding them can be super important long term. Ideally, we would get that dialed in so then you have an idea of where it's at, okay? And then from there, you can obviously start to cut calories and figure out what is a good deficit for you. Again, how deep you want to go with the deficit, how many calories you want to cut. And then again, your body fat percentage is going to play a big role in that. The leaner you are, you probably don't want to be as in large of a deficit as somebody who is maybe a little less, has a little bit more body fat than you. So again, we would ideally find that. So then again, so we have that, and then you diet, you lose weight, you get to the point where either from a time standpoint, you're done, you got to the level of leanness you want. And now it's time to go back to maintenance calories. What do? Do we go straight back to maintenance, or should we slowly tiptoe our way back up there? And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. And as always, it's very context dependent. Okay. In saying this, I would lean towards going closer to maintenance versus slowly adding. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to go straight to maintenance, but I would try and get you to get as close to maintenance as possible. Again, this in practice, this may, in theory, it's a lot easier to go over this, but again, in practice, things get a little noisy here in this process. So again, the key though is knowing, hey, what your kind of maintenance is. If you don't know that, you didn't completely screw up, but it's going to be a little bit harder to figure out where you're at. And so I would say typically in this situation, what I would do is maybe start you at a little bit lower than what your normal maintenance, what your maintenance was beforehand. One, it just we can find that new maintenance. Potentially, it may be a little bit lower. We don't know. Again, that's part of this. It leaves a little bit of room for mistakes that could be made. Maybe we overshot, whatever it may be. So it gives you a little bit of a buffer there. So I would rather do that than like slowly add calories, say 50 to 100 calories per week. Now, again, for some people, depending on where it's at, that might have to be again, there might not be a large range within that, but this depends on a lot of different things, right? So again, if you're someone who maybe you only cut a few calories, it was a little bit of a slower deficit, then for you, it's like you may have to make a small increase. And again, you probably would be fine to just go back to your maintenance. If it was a little bit more aggressive, maybe we'd slowly tiptoe our way back up there. But again, this is going to depend on a few things that I'm going to talk about. So in theory, let's say your maintenance is 2,200. Your fat loss phase, you are eating between 1,500 and 1,700. Again, we probably would, that first jump, again, this is all just theory. This could change in practice, but maybe we go from 1,700 to 1,800 to 2,000, right? To start, and then see what happens, give yourself a week or two, and then boom, and then within the next 2 to 4 weeks, we're back to your maintenance, right? That's one way you could go about it there. So that's just, if I'm just throwing out numbers and giving you an idea, that's something that we could potentially do. But I also don't really see any downside to being like, hey, I'm going to go from 1,700 to 2,000 to 2,200, or again, 21 to 2,300 there, right? But it really does depend on a few things. Are you experiencing diet fatigue issues? Are you super hungry? Are you having like menstrual cycle related issues? Are you just feeling super fatigued? If you're male, maybe it's like low testosterone. And again, this is typically going to come from the aggressiveness of your fat loss diet, as well as your current body composition, your current body fat levels. So again, the more aggressive we are, the leaner we are, you're probably going to experience a little bit more of these. But you could also go very aggressive and also see that as well too. Are you experiencing diet fatigue issues is something that we would want. If you are experiencing a little bit more of these, maybe we're going to be a little bit more aggressive on increasing your calories closer to maintenance. If you're not really experiencing these things, maybe we'll be a little less aggressive with it. Okay. So that's going to be the first thing that we are going to consider here in terms of what we're going to do with that. Because again, if you're experiencing a lot of diet fatigue issues, we want to try and get you to your maintenance calories as soon as possible. Next, your current body fat level. So again, the leaner you are, the more aggressive I'd be to getting you closer to your maintenance calories as soon as possible. The more body fat you have, we can tiptoe our way back up, and also assuming that number one's not there. If one's there and you aren't necessarily the leanest, maybe we do that first thing where I say I would lean towards getting closer to it, but again, maybe we're not adding 50 to 100 calories. But let's say you aren't experiencing diet fatigue, but you've just been dieting for a while, you've lost 10% or more of your body weight, and you're like, you know what, I need to get back to maintenance for a little bit. Then maybe in that scenario, going to slowly add calories back because you have a little bit of wiggle room there to do that. And then the third thing it's going to depend on is your mindset towards scale weight. So some people just are very, again, if this is their first time they've done this, increasing calories is a foreign concept. And so people can get overly analytical towards their scale weight and can get in their head mentally. So that is also something that we need to consider. Again, if you're someone who you're not experiencing diet fatigue issues, you aren't the leanest, you still have some body fat to lose, and you're not like overly worried about scale weight. For you, we could probably, I guess, again, that would be one where, again, you have the option to where either one is fine at that point, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with doing either one. But let's say they are experiencing a little bit of diet fatigue. They're on the leaner side but they also have some like issues with their mindset. Again, maybe that one's going to be the initial one where I'm like, hey, we're going to be somewhat aggressive, but we're not going to go straight to it. But someone doesn't care about scale weight. They're experiencing diet fatigue. They're leaner. We're going straight to maintenance at that point. We have the one extreme, we have in the middle, and then we have the other end of the spectrum of what could happen there. So hopefully that gives you some more insight into like kind of the thought process behind it, because again, this is a good question, but it's hard to just say, do this or do that, because it really depends on these things. Right. And again, there's other things that we can consider as well too. I'm sure we could make an entire hour-long podcast on this, but those would be the main things to look at. And again, people that listen to this and again, those would be the things that I would be looking at in terms of, if you're there, deciding on what to do with that. All right, so next question is a personal one. Not really, but I'm going to make it educational for people. What do I do for zone 2, my zone 2 cardio? Again, with this zone 2, I'm not a huge fan of calling it zone 2. I did initially, and now I'm like, I don't like to say that because I feel like it's now just a buzzword and like this thing that gets people to just have this very binary thinking to it, when really at the end of the day, I think zone 2 should be like your longer distance, lower intensity cardio sessions. Okay. It doesn't have to perfectly be in zone 2, because again, I think when people do this, then they just get too black or white with it when we think of it this way, when really zone 2 it really just depends on what is going. Again, we can change these things in terms of the intensity and whatnot, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be overly rigid with, oh, I got to be in zone 2. So again, I don't like to call it that. I just think that, hey, it's like this lower intensity, longer duration type cardio. So what do I do for it? I do the stationary bike with it. I personally would find ways to standardize it. Again, if in a perfect world, a client would be able to standardize it, we would do something consistent each week, but I understand that can get quite boring. But just understand, the more we change and like the more we have to switch it up, the tougher it is to see if you're making progress and to like force progression, right? So same thing here with like hypertrophy. It's, do you have to do the same training program for 6 to 12 weeks at one time? No, it's probably something you want to do to track progress and making sure you're progressing. And if you're not progressing, it allows you to look into things a little bit more. But again, the metric that you're looking at is, hey, am I building more muscle over time? And you could certainly do that. Same thing with cardio. It's like you could do the zone 2 stuff. You could do the cardio, and you could be random with what you do. You could switch it up each time. And looking at things like your resting heart rate, VO2 max, and stuff can be a good way to, if you're making progress. But within that, if we're not standardizing it, it gets a little bit harder to like truly know, hey, this is what's going to cause progressions, if that makes sense. So again, you have to just weigh the pros and cons of that there on what you want to do. But I do the stationary bike and I standardize it, which I didn't do right away. And now I'm paying attention to it more and how I standardize it. And again, this will probably be different from each cardio machine that you do. The level, right? So like the resistance and then the speed that I'm going at. And then from there, you can correlate those things to see if you're progressing, and you can progress in time. You can progress in like the power. Hey, I can do a higher speed and maintain a lower heart rate, and that's a sign of progression, right? Now, again, that could show up in, say, your resting heart rate and stuff like that later on, but you just go in and you may be progressing, you may not be if we don't do that. So again, I'd like to standardize it, and in a perfect world, we would do something low impact like that, or things that we can standardize. Again, you could run, but the problem with running is, for most people, they're very inefficient runners, and their heart rate gets super high, and then we run into this where it's like your long duration, lower intensity cardio is now a long duration, higher intensity cardio. And that's when you will start to maybe see some downstream effects in terms of your body comp and your ability to perform and adding muscle and maintaining muscle and whatnot. And then again, you also run into the energy expenditure side of things. You may be a lot hungrier, et cetera. So you would want to have some way to manage your nutrition or moderate your nutrition, right? But let's talk about the benefits. Like why? So what I do is right now, so I'm on again, in a perfect world, my training setup for body composition, right? And then we're also looking at, so again, we're losing less body fat, more muscle, and also overall health is going to be a combination of anywhere from around 3 to 4 weight training sessions per week, anywhere from 1 to 4 cardio sessions per week, and we're getting like 7 to 10K steps outside. And then again, maybe we're doing some like mobility and stuff like that in the process. That's my perfect would be my perfect setup for people. And again, maybe during certain periods of time, we're a little more focused on your cardiovascular endurance, and maybe it just depends on where you want to go. We're always hitting those kind of minimums there if we're focused on body comp. Now, again, if we are like, hey, I'm more focused on performance and endurance, then now your numbers may change a little bit in terms of what we do specifically there. How much do we need do I do? So right now I would say I'm like 50-50, where it's like I'm really I still want to build muscle. So I'm doing 3 weight training sessions per week, and then I'm doing 3 cardio sessions, and then hockey as well too, because that is another form of exercise that I would like somebody to do, is getting an extra form of cardio, but doing some sort of activity that's like unpredictable, right? So again, something like the most common one right now would be like pickleball. Again, that's going to be a great way to get some extra cardio in, and you're just doing movement that is semi unpredictable. Like you don't really know what's going to happen, right? You have to base it off of what the other person is doing and where the ball's going and etc. So again, if we can do something like that too, that would be one that I would add in there. And again, that sounds like a lot, but really, I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure we can move and get exercise in daily. Now, again, if we can't do that, there's ways that we can adjust it based on the person's time commitment. But in a perfect world, that's where we would be, right? And so from a cardio perspective, I am currently doing 3 and 3, and then playing hockey once a week, and then getting my steps to make sure I'm getting movement in throughout the day. So within that, my 3 cardio sessions, 2 are lower intensity, longer duration, right? So the goal there is to increase the kind of duration of it. And then the one's more of a aerobic interval style, right? So it's right now it's 5 minutes on. It's basically been 5 minutes on, between 4 and 5 minutes off. And again, trying to maintain some sort of speed and power during that period of time there, right? And then just watching my heart rate. And obviously my heart rate gets a lot higher on that than it does, say, on the Zone 2. So that's what I'm currently doing. So you look at that, these cardio sessions are anywhere from, they're usually about 45 to 60 minutes. Now, with the higher intensity stuff, it's, if you do 5 sets of 4 or 5, that's 20 to 25 minutes there. You're looking at anywhere from, let this be, sorry, let me do this math real quick, 90 to 120 minutes of Zone 2, and then we're looking at 20 to 30 minutes of higher intensity. So that gets me around what, 1 minute, I was going to say 150 hours, that would be insane, 150 minutes per week of this, right? Again, am I going to see this like massive increase in my cardiovascular endurance? Probably not. I think I've been doing cardio now consistently for over a year and a half now. And then before that, I probably was also in decent cardiovascular shape, not great, not terrible. And there's definitely some room for improvement there. So obviously saw a lot of those gains initially, and then now it's a little bit slower. So I'm probably not making a ton of progress, but it is a little bit more focus on it. I think under 50 minutes is perfect. Again, with cardio, it's like the more you can do, the better it's going to be. But obviously there's the time constraint with that. And then the less you can do, the higher the intensity can be. Like we don't need to necessarily worry about doing lower intensity stuff if we can only get, say, 30 minutes in per week, right? That's what I'm doing now, and that's what that looks like there. I just want to go over a few ways that doing this will benefit you and why you should there, and then we can talk about again how much. So again, if you're, a lot of people listen to this, you're lifting weights, okay? And so basically it's how aerobic training can benefit lifters. So one, you're going to have improved recovery between sets and workouts. Okay. So for me specifically, I feel like I'm able to recover in between each set and each workout. Right. So again, that allows you to be able to do potentially a little bit more in your weight training. And so again, if our cardiovascular fitness is not in a good spot, again, we want it. That's a benefit of it. It can improve your ability to handle discomfort / stay focused in your sets. So you're able to dig a little bit deeper into your sets, again, accumulating more training volume, which is going to be good from a muscle building standpoint. High quality training volume, improve nutrient partitioning. So again, our body's going to, again, from like insulin sensitivity, blood sugar management, adding in cardio and doing aerobic training with weight training is basically, it's going to get you the best bang for your buck from that. Again, you can get great blood sugar regulation, insulin sensitivity from weight training, but also adding in cardiovascular type training is going to only enhance that. Again, lower fatigue overall from anything you do. So everything you do, you're just going to feel better and you're not going to feel as tired from doing it, which in turn to me means you have more resilience to any stressor that you have on the body, right? Again, stress being anything from you lose your job to you're fighting with your spouse to financial stress to any of it, right? This is just going to allow it to, again, any sort of stressor on the body, you're going to have better resilience to that stressor. It's not going to hurt you as much as it would if you weren't doing it. And then just overall health and longevity. Anytime you look at lower resting heart rates, higher VO2 max, it improves people's health and longevity long term, right? So again, that's why we want to make sure we do it. Basically, you'll be able to do more high quality training, and you'll obviously be in better overall health by doing it. Okay. And so again, what do we want to do to minimize cardio's effect on strength and muscle gain? Because that's usually the biggest thing that people worry about. Try to stick to more low impact modalities. So again, that's why I like the stationary bike. It's a little less fatiguing than say a running. Do your weights before cardio when you have to do both in the same day. Avoid long periods of being in a calorie deficit and a large deficit combined with high amounts of cardio. For me, it probably wouldn't be the best from a building muscle standpoint. If I was doing 5-6 days of cardio per week and then I'm also in a calorie deficit, it's not going to be great from a muscle building standpoint. Definitely not going to build muscle. Could potentially lose muscle at that point. Just depend on what my nutrition looks like, making sure I get enough protein, etc. But you're also just performance isn't going to be as great either. So again, we want to avoid long periods of time in a deficit. Recovery, we want to have good nutrition. We want to have properly programmed training, right, in combination with it. So again, like watching the intensity, etc. We want to make sure sleep's in a good spot. And again, the more cardio you do overall, the more it can impact strength muscle and the more important recovery becomes. Like I said, if you're going to be in a deficit, like you can utilize cardio to help you expend more energy. That's probably not the time you want to do 6 days a week of cardio and dial back your weight training. You probably want to keep it at least similar. If I were to do it now, say I were to cut, I probably would go back to a little less cardio, keep weights the same, and then just keep overall activity the same, and then get most of that deficit through nutrition. How much? Really, whatever you can do will work. Could be something like this, 1 to 3 lower intensity type sessions, 30 to 90 minutes each, and then one high intensity session where, again, you're in that higher heart rate zone for about 15 to 30 minutes. Again, so more interval type style there with that. And again, prefer low impact bike, row, or elliptical there as well too. Again, it's super beneficial. Again, if we're not doing any dedicated cardio that gets your heart rate up for sustained periods of time, you're probably likely leaving some progress on the table from a body comp standpoint, muscle gain, fat loss. You're not maximizing your overall health / long-term health. You're not feeling as good as you could be. And at the very least, making things less efficient from a body comp standpoint than they could be. And lastly, your weight training sessions are not your cardio. You can totally just do steps, lift weights, and manage nutrition to improve your body comp in overall health. You can do those things and be good to go, but adding this in is just going to be additive for all the reasons we talked about, right? Again, totally just doing steps, lifting weights, and managing your nutrition is going to help improve your overall health there. So again, you'll hear that and again, totally agree. But again, I think adding this in will only help improve all those things. And then a common thought is, but I thought it kills your metabolism or kills your gains. And again, this is only if your approach is terrible. Too much cardio overall paired with always doing high intensity work, low protein, always pairing it with low calorie eating, poor lifestyle, etc. Again, program right, cardio is going to complement your gains there with that. So let me know if you have any questions on that topic. I know it was more so about my training, but I just want to throw in the benefits and why I do it. All right, the last question of the day is I have an operation. I can't do any physical activity. I currently am doing 25,000 steps, weight training 5 days per week, and currently eating 3,100 calories. What do I need to make any adjustments here from a nutrition perspective? And so my big thing here is first, it's only 3 days. So like I wouldn't overly stress this, but the follow-up to this person was, hey, what is your overall goal? Are you currently in a phase where you're trying to add lean mass? Are you just trying to maintain? Are you dropping body fat? Like, where are we at? Now, obviously at 3,100 calories, but you're doing 25,000 steps. I don't know what your goal is, right? That to me, that's going to be the most important thing in terms of what is your goal? Like, what are you currently doing? Because again, if it is fat loss, we probably do want to adjust it at least somewhat. If you're in a phase where you're trying to add size, you're probably fine. If you're trying to maintain, maybe we make a small decrease there. But really, at the end of the day, it's 3 days. So long as, I mean, if you ate 3,100 calories for 3 days, I mean, if anything, depending on what the operation is, I would imagine that's probably going to speed things up as long as you're eating somewhat nutritious foods here in this process. But it's hard to give exact numbers because one, everyone's going to adapt differently to this. Some people, they would decrease their movement and they're not going to see too much of a change. Some people, it's going to be more drastic than others. So it's really hard. It's hard to give exact numbers. And that's where the trial and error side of things is going to be important. And this is where I come back to one, what is your overall goal? And second, it is only 3 days. Now, in saying this, what can we do in this process to, again, I would just focus on like making sure you get enough protein, eat some fruit and veggie, and whole foods, and don't go crazy with your like tasty foods, get good sleep, recover, and you're going to be fine. Like it really is not going to matter because it's only 3 days. Now, if this was a 3-week thing, 4-week thing, we would probably want to adjust. Just for example, I have a client who just recently had to get shoulder surgery. And for him, his ultimate goal was to add size. And so he's going to be out for a little while. His activity is probably going to be a little bit lower. So we did have him decrease his calories by a couple hundred calories. But again, I told him to also listen to his body. If you're like super hungry, again, look at your food quality. But if you're super hungry, that's your body telling you something. If you're super full, again, that's your body telling you something. I think if you listen to those cues versus, hey, I'm eating 3,100 calories, I'm going to override my body's cues because I need to eat 3,100 calories because I'm doing 25,000 steps and I have to be so meticulous with where exactly my weight's going and it has to stay the exact same. It can't go up or down. We're missing the big picture here with that. And again, this is a side tangent, but I think too many people miss out on what their body's telling them because they get so focused on these things, right? They get so focused on their scale weight. They get so focused on, hey, I know that I'm eating this amount of calories and I'm doing this amount of activity. And so I have to, if I go down in activity, I have to decrease my, it's like, this is the down, like tracking calories and stuff like this can be super helpful, but it can also lead to analyzation of things. And then you miss body cues. This is why I think it's important that I have clients tell me how they're feeling as well too, because that's super important. That's going to override any caloric decision there, right? Hopefully that's helpful. With that, I didn't give anybody an exact answer in this situation. Maybe we would drop calories by 100 or so, or a couple hundred, anywhere from 2 to 500. But like I said, the other things that are more important are the things that I went over. And again, realize it is only 3 days. So that's it for this episode. If you missed out, I am still accepting enrollment for the Body Recomp 101 Blueprint. I'm going to extend it into this week. It's my coaching program, one-on-one coaching program. Again, these are all things that we would go over, right? So if you're not sure on, hey, I need to bring my calories back to maintenance or do I need to slowly go up again? These would be things that we figure out and we dial in, right? In terms of we take data and then we see how you're feeling and then we go from there. Same thing here. If you had an operation that came up, you couldn't train for a couple of days, we figure out these things, right? So again, if you're tired of worrying about these things and it adds a lot of stress, again, the one-on-one Body Recomp Blueprint coaching program is for you. The link to set up a call is in the show notes, or you can reach out to me on Instagram and shoot me a message, Body Recomp Blueprint, and we can chat. But after this week, I am going to shut that down. So if you're interested, let me know. You can also follow me on Instagram, Jeff H_, and that's where I'm most active on social media. So if you have any questions on this, let me know. I'll chat with you guys next time.